Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tales from the Backlog, a gaming deep dive podcast. I am your host, as always, Dave Jackson, he, him.
And I am Luis Aguasvivas, he, him, they, them.
And today we'll be covering Arco. But first, if this is your first time listening, here's the spoiler policy. If you need to know about spoilers for Arco, we're not going to spoil the story for a while, as we always do on the show. We'll have a dedicated spoiler section, and you can check down in the show notes for a timestamp for when spoilers begin. Until that point, you're safe. And if you like the show, please consider doing what you can to support it. Best way to support it is to share with friends, post it in Discord servers, tell people that you know like the game or looking for a new video game podcast. You can also leave ratings and reviews on the podcast apps, likes and comments on YouTube. And if you want to kick me a few bucks a month to help out that way, you can do that at patreon.com/realdavejackson. So with that being said, I want to reintroduce today's guest. As you heard at the top of the show, Luis Aguasvivas is back. He's returning guest on the show. He's a games critic whose words can be read at NPR, Debug Magazine, Gamers with Glasses, Unwinnable, and many more places. And he's got a poncho to go with every outfit. Luis, welcome back. I forgot that was what I wrote for your intro.
No, yeah, it's I'm a gaucho, so gotta wear the poncho.
Yeah, great to have you back, man. Previously, we did a really fun episode about Shenmue together. That's episode 155 of the show. And we have a very different game today, but another really interesting one to talk about.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about the
Absolutely.
game in question here.
Yeah, that game in question is Arco. It is a turn-based RPG developed by Franek, Max Cahill, Bibiki and Fayer, and published by Panic for PC and Switch in 2024. And the main credits for the game are those four main developers. There are more people, but once again, they are writing and programming credits to Antonio Fayer Uribe, programming by Max Cahill, art by Franek Nowotniak, and music by Jose Ramon Bibiki Garcia. And if you don't know what Arco is, we've got our quick pitches like we always do at the top of the show. Mine is take revenge on your colonizers at any cost. Luis, what would you say?
It's a perfect pitch. I was just gonna say, just hemispheric anti-colonialism.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In tiny pixel art form, yeah.
extremely tiny.
Yeah. I played this on PC. It took me 9 hours to beat. I played it all on my actual PC. Didn't try it on the Steam Deck or anything. Where did you play this? How long did a playthrough take you?
Yeah, I played it on the Switch too.
Okay.
And it took me about 12, 13 hours, but I'm a sicko,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is you have a lot of choice in where you go and what you choose to do. It's you're kind of moving along the story and stuff, but there's little diversions all over the place. So I can see it taking a little bit longer.
Yeah, and this game can get pretty hard depending on the decisions you make, and you can catch yourself like replaying the same battle for
I
at
can see
least like
that too.
30 times. So not
Yeah.
that it happened to me, 'cause I'm
No,
so good at
definitely
video
not.
games.
Yeah. So we always start the shows with our histories with the game that we're talking about. And with this one, my history is not so interesting. It's just a game I heard, it got really good reviews. A lot of my friends liked it a lot. And so I put it on a wish list and then I got it in a Secret Santa. Boom, there's my history with Arco. But I remember a long time ago, this episode's been a long time in the making. I was talking with you about a game to have you back on the podcast. I gave you a list, and you picked Arco out of it. So what's your history with what drew you to Arco here?
Yeah, so I was actually gonna be set to review this when it came out in 2024, but it was really glitchy.
Mm,
And there's something like if the game is very like extremely glitchy, like it was crashing on me like all the time. Like I
mm,
got like a few like blue screens on like the Switch version where it's like I couldn't really finish it. So I like dropped it for a bit. I got pretty far, all things considered, because I was like, I'm gonna finish the game. So I always wanted to revisit it, hence why, I picked that out of the list. So
hmm
then I know Lost in Cult is doing like their editions, they're physical.
mm.
Um, games, which actually have some behind me here. The first three here that came out. Arco's gonna be part of that series, like the next batch, and that like re-piqued my interest.
Mhm.
Um, and I just played it again for the show here, and
Yeah, for me, I think, like, the thing that made me actually, like, really wanna play it and, put it on my wish list and, kind of prioritize it a little bit once I got it in that Secret Santa is, well, number 1, I guess, being grateful for the gifts that I get, but number 2 is, the focus on, like, this story of being colonized, we'll say. It was really interesting to me because, it's not something that I it's not sometimes there are games that where you're like you're doing stuff like this, but it's not what the game is about really. And this game, there's like that game Greedfall by Spiders that was where you're on the side of the colonizers. And I never got far enough in that game to see what that game did with that story. I heard it was a little interesting, but this one you're on the other side of that. You're an indigenous a group of indigenous characters, and the colonizers are taking over where you live. And that was really the thing that was like, I'm very interested to see what the story does with that. Because as we say with indie games, a lot of times indie games are telling stories that you're just not going to get in like much higher budget productions. So that was kind of the thing that I was really interested in seeing here. I also heard the combat was great. And our like top level thoughts, I guess, before we dive in proper. I've got a few like structural issues with the way the story is told that I came out of it feeling like I rushed through it, like that the game was over before I really got a chance to soak in it. And we'll dig into that stuff a little later. But the reason I note that as a negative for me. Most games are too long, and a lot of times we're talking about like I think this game could be 10 hours less, and it would be just fine. With this one here, I think that this is a story. It is a world that they've built. There are stakes that I like feel strongly about. It's a story that I wanted to like spend a lot more time in, and it really set up those things that I was excited about. The colonizer versus indigenous population story was pretty good, I thought. The revenge story that you go on was really interesting, and it's only gotten more interesting since I thought about it after finishing the game. And the combat system is really fun. I liked it a lot. And what's interesting in a story about getting revenge here is that the combat is so fun that I rushed into violent situations a lot of times because the combat's fun. I want to fight stuff, and Arco is really interesting because it punishes hasty decision making. We'll say sometimes you can get yourself into some real pickles. So it's a really interesting game that like I don't love it as much as I think a lot of people do, but I do think it's really cool. I did enjoy playing through it. And it's definitely going to have it's going to set up an interesting conversation for us here. Where are you at with Arco? Kind of on the other side of now basically two playthroughs.
yeah, I'm kind of fall like within the same like ballpark that you are. I mean, I appreciate what it does well and what it does that I guess a lot of other games just don't really do. Like when it comes to like it's like central themes and like the perspective it shows on like indigenous groups now, but it also does it in this like it's a very much like a fantasy world. Like it's
Yeah.
inspired by a lot of like the Western hemisphere. So like the western like part that's like the United States, Mexico, and and South America. But then there's some, I think there's like Tuareg people in the game as well, which that's obviously that's West African.
Mm.
So that so all this like things like intermingle within like this world. I think they
Hmm.
call them like Tuareg people
Yeah.
there, and I'm like, oh, there's just like Tuareg. It's like really but they're like in like whatever, like in what looks like central Mexico, or like so
Hmm.
and that's really neat. Yeah, the gameplay is it's really fun. It's actually like exhilarating, in a weird way that that type of pause like action like gameplay is, which we'll get into it a bit more.
Hmm.
Now, I think the game's just really glitchy. I think there's still, even with
Is it
this
still on
version,
Switch?
yeah, and there's ways that like you can still not break it, but do things like, you have a lot of the dash abilities, and if you
Mhm.
dash, you can kind of like dash into like a situation where you can't get out of, and then
Okay.
you're kind of like, oh, I guess I'm just gonna let, I can't like hit any of like the target, so like you
Mm.
have to wait. I'm just like, oh, I guess I'm just sitting duck here. Luckily, I do like the game expects you to make a lot of mistakes, and
Yeah.
and that really helps it. Um, in regards to its length, I really like its length, and I really like its structure. It
Mhm.
really reminds me of something like this is like a weird one, but I think it's like app. The, I think it's the Oregon Trail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is like a lot more action oriented than the Oregon Trail, but you have kind of this like, not on rails, but you have like, it's very, it's very linear in the sense of like, you start at this point, you're getting to a specific point,
Mhm.
and there's really, I mean, there's backtracking in Arco, but really though, like the story's like ever pushing you forward. Like you can do
Yeah.
things that even without you knowing are gonna push like the story.
Yep.
So, which I think that's like really neat. Like it really just like it really pushes you. It's like it's really like a role playing game, like
Yeah.
the more classic ones in a sense. I think games give players way too much agency in that regard to players. I think this one does that pretty well though.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of decisions to make and a lot of like how are you going to choose to spend your time? Who are you going to help? Stuff like that decisions. I can see the Oregon Trail comparison in that way. What I meant structurally is like the multiple protagonist approach to it, and the way that those things tie together. I thought was a little unsatisfying to me. So more on that probably in the spoiler section, but
Yeah, we'll get
that's the
into that.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have actually a lot of issues with the overall like story, like the way
Okay.
it's laid out. So yeah, and some of the
Yeah.
writing too, but we'll get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, why don't we take this chance to take our first music break? And when we come back, we will set up that story and kind of dive in a little bit more on what's going on in Arco. So, Arco is set again in a frontier era North America, like non-specific place. Although I guess if you're really good at picking out geography and like local plants and stuff like that, you might be able to. I can't. I just know generally, Texas, Mexico, that area seems right to me, or like the Western U.S. desert
Yeah, you
and
see
stuff like
like
that.
Monument Valley like
Yeah.
structures at times too. Yeah.
Yep. So that area, and it's set during the Spanish colonization of the area. And so throughout the different acts of the game, you play as different indigenous protagonists as they kind of come in contact with, they call them the newcomers. They come in contact with them more and more as the story goes. You begin the game in the prologue playing as a boy named Teco. And then as you go, you pick up more characters. You control more characters. Act two starts with this seasoned warrior named Tizo. And then you go on, you meet more characters. And we mentioned earlier the revenge aspect of this story. And that's what this generally is it is a revenge story against the newcomers that are coming and causing violence and generally fucking things up for the indigenous people. And I won't spoil what goes on, not yet, but I will say that for any good revenge story to have a momentum going forward, I need to be on board with why I want revenge. And like the white people coming and like fucking things up, that's yes, of course, we don't want that to happen to the people that we're building up like a relationship with in the game. But the prologue of this game sets up a very strong case for why these people need to go, we'll say. So it starts with a bang. It's a pretty short prologue. And then I always felt like a very strong drive to get revenge throughout the acts that followed, we'll say. Even if you're not controlling the same character each time, you get different reasons why you want to be getting revenge and work in that way. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it sets it up initially like very well. I
Hmm.
do think that they're maybe a little too cartoonish. The bad guys, like it's
Hmm.
almost like they're just here and they're just like, which yeah. So I mean, one thing though, I don't think it's necessarily like Spanish colonization. I think it's like a hybrid influence of that, and then obviously like American expansion, like into the West
Yeah,
as well.
that's true. Yeah.
Especially later on when you start seeing like well, not too much into spoilers, but things that like fit more into, into that specifically. But yeah, it definitely like on a surface level, like your motivation, like within like each like chapter, you're just like, okay, yeah, I see why you wanna fuck these people up.
Hmm.
you know?
To your point about some of the newcomers being a little cartoonish, some of them are, especially like the final boss per se, like so to
Yeah.
speak, little cartoonish. I do like that, like you do meet some just regular people. Like
Yeah.
as far as the newcomers come, there's just some people that are like, yeah, life's hard out here for us. We're having a bad time too. You meet people kind of all ranges there, and the game kind of primes you to like be preemptively upset at any of them that you meet. And then sometimes you talk with them, and they're just like, come sit by the campfire, have a meal with us,
Yeah, you
and they're
can share,
yeah,
yeah.
they're fine. So I do think that like overall, it's not like they're all
No, they're not all.
they're not like Batman villains all the time, like they're
But
some of
key
them are.
characters, like the ones that are like, at least from the two playthroughs that I've done, like you can't really. It just seems like you're like deadlocked into this conflict with them, and
Oh
they're
yeah.
like, if Sephiroth was a Quentin Tarantino villain, in a spaghetti western, just like
Uh-huh.
humorously like evil.
Yeah. It definitely gets to that point. Especially with the final one, for sure. Uh, so I mentioned the multiple protagonists approach to it, and so you start out with one character in Act One, then you go through different characters in the there's 5 acts, so you go through a different character each time, and then the characters are all joined together in the final act, going toward the end. And this is something I'm pretty mixed about. Is this multiple character approach? I like the idea that you're getting multiple perspectives and you're getting multiple cultures. They're all from different cultures. Within, indigenous populations, not a monolith. There's multiple different groups in that. And in this game, you'd control people from those different groups. You learn a little bit about who they are. And I like that you're getting those different perspectives throughout here. The thing that kind of trips me up about this is there's one of the characters, Tizo, who I think is so much better developed than the other ones. And then you get later on in the story, and this feels like Tizo's story more so than the others. Like you play through a chapter with the others, but when it really comes down to like, we're going to get to the conclusion of Arco, it's all about Tizo, and the others feel like they're just kind of there for the ride. Like everyone's there with a common cause, but it still feels like we're really strongly following this one character. And I wonder if it wouldn't have been better to like have this more like a traditional RPG where you play as Tizo the whole time and just pick up these other characters as you go, like party style. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Because I'm kind of torn on this. That's what left me feeling a little unsatisfied at the end was we have these two main characters that feel really sidelined at the end. And I like Tizo's story. I'm not mad that that's the one that it kind of focuses on, but yeah.
I mean, I honestly didn't mind like just the structure, and I think it actually lends the narrative quite a bit of punch
Hmm.
to it because and it also like when it comes to the gameplay loop, like it keeps you kind of on your toes because like when
That's
you
true.
get used to the character gameplay wise, then
Hmm.
it's almost like, oh, that's when they switched. and then eventually, like right when it, at the, no spoilers, but eventually, like you come back and you can play with them.
Hmm.
You get to, I guess, try out your skills again on them. I
Yeah.
I felt it was fairly compelling. Like it
Hmm.
was, yeah. And Tizo, is like, I think the thing with Tizo, maybe they missed the mark there. They do just give you more of that character, so it
Hmm.
does feel. And I think initially, probably when they were writing it, and this is not just speculation. This is also from like interviews from the designers. I think he was the focus on,
Yeah.
uh when it comes to the game. And I don't know when in development they started to like add like the other characters. I think, but they definitely. I don't think they're just like appendages. I think that they're also protagonists, like in their own way, and like their own like motivation.
Yeah, in their own individual chapters, I was compelled by those little short stories that you play through. It's just when it all comes together, they start to feel a little like they're along for the ride, and we're back on Tizo's story. It's like we started with Tizo's story in Act Two, then we took a 2 act break from that to do other stories, and then we pick up Tizo's story, and it ended up feeling like just like the main story of this was a little broken up.
Yeah. So I know that Antonio Fayer Uribe, in one of the interviews, he says that he wanted the structure to be Tizo's story initially. I'll put a note on that. We'll talk about this in the spoiler section,
Sure.
but I think there's
Yeah.
a lot. It reveals a lot. I think it's just because of the branching paths of the narrative, and just like all the dialogue that kind of
Mhm.
created a design challenge for the developers that they weren't right that they weren't expecting, as like the
Mhm.
game kept getting bigger and bigger, and which led to some. Well, I mean, I agree with you. There are definitely some like issues, and then that final chapter, it does feel, narratively speaking, anticlimactic.
A little from the perspective of having like multiple characters who are all treated equally,
That's just
definitely.
like, yeah,
Yeah, definitely anticlimactic there. One thing about like, and obviously not talking specifically about what happens in the final chapter, but I do think like the story that we are told wrapped up in a way that I found like pretty compelling in the moment. Like I really enjoyed the ending of the game, and it also like brought on this like I don't know if this is I don't know if this is exactly dramatic irony, but it's like we know how the story of colonization played out in this region, right? We know the greater story. We're playing through a very small scale story in Arco. And so there was a I think there's like a sadness to playing through this revenge story that you're not ending colonization in the region. You're not stopping the boats from coming over and stuff like that. And this is a very local story that we're playing through in Arco. And so like I liked the way that this story wrapped up, and then sitting back and thinking about it and thinking like, a lot of revenge stories will have you sit back at the end and be like, was it worth it? And I think that the exploration of that question in Arco is really interesting. And again,
yeah.
more like hard details in the spoiler section, but like this is an interesting part of historical fiction where you're like seeing this and then comparing it with how history turned out. And it's like I don't know, there's like a sadness hanging over this story, even if there are triumphs along the way, you know?
Yeah, there definitely is. This reminds me. I mean, I wish I can, maybe at some point I'll like interview the designers on this, because
Mm,
I'm actually obsessed with post-colonial narratives, especially like fictionalized narratives that look in the past
mm-hmm,
for it. Especially a lot of great stuff like in movies. I don't know if you've ever seen stuff like Kigos Pontokerbo's Battle of Algiers,
mm-mm,
a
have not.
very famous movie about essentially like the war, the Algerian like war of independence against the French. It's like
Mm,
it's insane. It's like an insane like film. It's so influential that that's like what the U.S. government for a long time was like using to train like their soldiers, so they understand like the type of combat that they were going to get
hmm.
into like in Iraq.
Mhm.
And it's like it's shot like a documentary, but it's a fictional film. You're watching this, you're just like, how is this not real? You feel like you're like in combat. He did a second film after that. Well,
Mhm.
not his second film, but it's following similar themes, called Burn, which takes place in the Caribbean. And it
Mhm.
stars Marlon Brando, who plays like the most despicable human being ever. So he's essentially this like hired mercenary for the British Empire who goes
Mhm.
in and essentially does what we would now consider to be counterinsurgency. So he would
Mhm.
go into these places and just like create like disorder and like try to like collapse like insurgent movements. In this case, like for like independence. And the tone is very similar,
Mm.
I feel. I don't know if the developers like watched that movie, but you know, you have these folks. It's not necessarily like an insurgency because they're not like there's not like a mass movement. It's very much like Hollywood esque, you know, Western style. Like you know,
Mhm.
you've done me dirty, like a
Yeah.
Sam Peckinpah like film or something. You know, and just getting revenge.
Yeah, Tizo does map onto, kind of those, like, solo, Western movie protagonists, pretty well. Just kinda a loner on the trail and, he meets up with like-minded people, along the way, but he's definitely he's the kinda guy that rolls into town and everyone kinda looks and is like, "Oh, Tizo's back.
Yeah,
Tizo's
no,
covered in blood again."
yeah. It feels. Have you seen Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man?
I have not, no.
Okay, it's just like it's so now that I just thought about that now, and it feels so much it's like a revisionist Western that came out in
Mm.
the 90s where Johnny Depp essentially goes insane and he thinks he's the reincarnation of the British poet William Blake. And
Okay.
he's essentially dying throughout the whole movie, but he's in the American West, but it's like it's hell. It just looks like fucking hell. Like, you know, you have like all the environmental like destruction going on in the period.
Mhm.
Um and he has an indigenous guide. I think he goes by uh Nobody. That's what he goes by.
Mhm.
And he's essentially almost like Virgil to like Dante, like in you know in like the Inferno, like guiding him through like this passage eventually until he's gonna die,
Mhm.
and he's just like killing all these like crazy just like colonizers and like expansionists on there. Like it's
Mm.
kind of that feeling of it, and the soundtrack is similar, very guitar heavy.
Yeah. How do you think Arco stacks up with those other stories then? You said you're really interested in this kind of post-colonialist narrative.
I think it's fine. I mean, honestly, like narratively wise, it has a lot to like it has a lot. I don't think it's that strong. I don't think Arco in itself
Mhm.
it's that strong. I kind of wish it had a less story
Okay.
because I think that what it does like visually is so
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah, we could
Um,
talk about that for
yeah,
sure.
and in the realm of games, though, there's not very many games like this narrative wise. Like,
Yeah.
so you know, that's fairly impressive.
Yeah, I definitely like I said, we play a lot of games that are based around revenge. So like we have that theme is very common in video
True.
games, but from that colonization perspective, definitely not super common. You mentioned the visuals, and part of the reason why I wanted this game to last longer, or I wanted to kind of feel like I was like soaking in it more, is I think that the way they build out the world with music and with visuals is really, really strong. So we kind of dive into that a little bit. The first thing you'll notice, I think, when you look at screenshots from Arco, especially from like traversal or like if you're in a town or something like that, in combat too, I guess, but it's super zoomed out. It's probably probably the most zoomed out video game where you're like it's not like an RTS where you're controlling hundreds of dudes at the same time, you know? You've got one guy that you're controlling most of the time. Sometimes you got one or two others with you. But it's really, really zoomed out and pixel art. So you can see like Tizo, for example, is made up of these very basic components because you're so far away from the action. What I think this does though is like showcases these landscapes in a really amazing way. Like every time you roll into a new town or basically most new screens that you go on, really like shows you like the vastness and the scale of the area that you're traveling through. And so even with like kind of chunky pixels and stuff like that, it's a gorgeous game.
No, it's I think that is where it's like its greatest like achievement is, and that's saying a lot because I think like the gameplay is extremely solid in this one. But
Yeah.
it's essentially like I counted there's like 6 different art styles like that go into this game, but they're all cohesive,
Mhm.
right? You know, you see, I think the classic example is something like the early like PlayStation era SquareSoft games, specifically like Final Fantasy VII, right, where you have the FMV stuff is like what they wanted to do
Yeah.
initially, but then
Yeah.
when you're playing it for the most part, you get this like weird like polygonal like holdovers from like the N64 development, you know,
Mhm.
of the game and
Yeah.
everything. This one, as you were saying, you essentially have at the lowest, meaning we're gonna like get like really like minuscule, right? Where you're like the smallest is when you're traversing the the map, right? Where
Mhm.
you have like that visual aesthetic where you have the pick points on the map, and
Yeah.
then when you pick a point, then you're zooming in, and then you're just like sometimes I think maybe like 5 or 6 pixels, like, per character, like,
Mhm.
it's just, like it's, like,
Little Lego
tiny,
people. Yeah.
and then the background is just, like, this, like, gorgeous, like, monument a lot of different, like, types of landscapes, but, like, you know,
Yeah.
stuff, like, out of, like, a John Ford, like, Western, like, The Searchers and stuff. It's just, like, really beautiful.
Mhm.
Then you have the battles, right? When you're in the battles, and you're a little bigger, that has, like, states. Then you have there's cutscenes at certain points, not a lot of them, but then you
Mhm.
have, like, that style. There's character portraits, which give you,
Mhm.
like, a little bit more detail, and then the official art, which obviously you don't really
Yes.
see that in within the game, but it's essentially gives you I guess, like, it gives your mind, like, a map of, like, how you're supposed to, like, you know, I guess, like, really fill in, like, the abstractions
Yeah.
on it,
The
and it
the
has,
same
like, a
as
really strong point, yeah.
yeah, the same as like those old RPGs like you
Yeah.
mentioned when you'd look at the character portrait and then you'd look in the game and be like, "Well, you know, the hair color's the same. I guess that's what they look like when if you got to see all the detail and stuff." Yeah.
Yeah, but I think its approach to, like, its look, its visuals, I think it's stronger than, like, photorealism, because photorealism doesn't give you really anything mentally, like, as a player to, like, actually, like, engage with. When you have, like, this stuff, like, you have to do some mental work, and within that mental work, it really takes, like, a hold on you, so yeah, it's really it can be breathtaking. Like some of
Yeah.
these vistas that it's inspired by, if you've ever like been to like maybe like you know some salt flats in like South America or you know Monument Valley like in the United States,
Mhm.
or you know the the jungles in like the Yucatan Peninsula. Like it's like oh my gosh, you know, it's like Mexican pyramids like in like in
Yeah.
this game. You know, it's really neat.
Yeah, it's got a lot of really breathtaking places for sure. As you were kind of making that comparison to photorealism, I was like, what photorealistic style like deserts can I think of? And I was like, Cosmo Canyon in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is you know, I went in that and I was in that game, not to go on a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I already did that podcast, but like
Yeah,
I wasn't stunned by the vistas in that, even though, you know, it looks nice. But every time I was basically like hammering the screenshot button in Arco because it was like, fuck, I gotta share this with people and just show like this art's really fucking good. And I think it really like the way that it sells that scale and like how basically how small you are in this world and in this region. And kind of sells like how far away these places are from each other. If you want to think about the way the map is laid out, and like if you're on one screen, like one vista, you don't see like the next town in the background or something like that. You're pretty far away from it. Kind of sells the journey that you go on and just how big this place is.
yeah,
Um,
and I can't think from the top of my head a game that is close really to like this sort of visual style. Obviously, we have
yeah.
pixel and everything, but the use of it, it's fairly remarkable. I can see
Yeah.
go like panic to want to publish the game.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's kind of similar to, again, like those old RPGs. Like you'd be super zoomed out on like the world map as you travel the overworld in a Final Fantasy 7 or something like that. But just the level of artistry in comparing like what those overworlds look like with this is crazy. Like this,
Yeah.
it's just really beautiful. And then you have this really good acoustic guitar based soundtrack giving you that, like I said, like that kind of Western flavor. In a lot of like the areas where like there's not much going on, you're just in a town or you're just traveling on the map or something like that. It's a pretty laid back soundtrack that just kind of gives you that flavor. But there's a lot more going on in the soundtrack too than just kind of those laid back acoustic guitar based tracks. And I think this is a standout thing about the game too, is the music.
No, the music is like it really hits like the spot. And shout outs to Jose Ramon Bibiki Garcia.
Hmm. One of the things that really stood out to me is the end of act cutscenes as you like usually so you finish an act, the character will then travel someplace and you'll see them kind of riding through the different locations on their way to wherever they're going, and there'll be a track that comes in with vocals, and all of those songs are number one, they're tied to what's going on in the story, like the vocals like tie in with that in an interesting way. They're all sung in Spanish with English subtitles for people like me. It's much appreciated. And then the just like the vocals are really beautiful. The songs are really affecting, and a lot of times the acts end on like these big climactic moments, or maybe it's like something really sad happened, and the character's having a very sad ride through the countryside. And I really liked these vocal songs to kind of underscore that before we move on to something different.
Yeah, no, it's those are it really gives like it's like this epic like quality to
Mhm.
it. Yeah, it's great.
In the main menu too, the main menu song is one of those that has vocals, and that's a really strong like boot up the game for the first time, sit, hang out, listen to the song in the main menu, and you're like, okay, some emotion gonna happen in this game. Um, One criticism that I did have, I wanted to get your take on, that I've like walked back a little bit since listening to the soundtrack over the last couple days is I didn't think the battle songs fit super well when I was playing. There, you go from like this acoustic guitar kind of Western flavored soundtrack everywhere else, and then the battle tracks are like electric guitar, like
Electric
rock
heavy electric
riffs.
guitar. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like that contrast on it.
There is some good flavor and like texture in those songs. So like if you just listen to the guitar, they're kind of like basic rock riffs, da 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 da, like that. But there's like different instruments in there to like give it a little bit more flavor. That like once I listened to it closely, I was like, I see this now. And they're like you can like bop your head as you're listening to it as you're doing the battles too.
Yeah, and then sometimes if you play like the Switch version, it glitches,
Mm.
and you just hear like the explosion sound, like just like looped throughout the whole battle,
Ooh.
and that definitely is very tense. No, the
Uh-huh.
soundtrack is no, in all seriousness, I think like the soundtrack is like really good, and it's like things like available like on on a lot of like I think like on YouTube, like Spotify
Yeah, you can
and
get it on
Bandcamp.
Bandcamp too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially Bandcamp. Yeah, get it on Bandcamp. Don't listen to it on those other two places I just
Yeah.
mentioned.
Little known thing about the production of this podcast, little peek behind the curtain. If a soundtrack's available for purchase on Bandcamp, I always buy it. And when
Interesting.
I'm using soundtracks in the podcast here, so I did get it on Bandcamp, and there's a lot of songs. It's like a pretty big soundtrack. There's like over 50 tracks in it, so good stuff. talking about the battle music, so let's talk about the combat in general. And before we talk about the combat, I want to reiterate that, like, I think this game has like a really nice marriage between revenge narrative and mechanical combat, because this combat system, the fights in this game are so fun and like engaging and strategic and stuff, that you go through the game, there's events that pop up where they'll ask you, like, do you want to help this person or ignore this person? Or like this person comes up to you and they say like, oh, those thieves, they stole from me, they're at this place, go there and like get my stuff back. And you're like, you have choices whether you want to rush into fighting them, or something else. Sometimes you'll go into a screen and it will be like, there's some of those the red company, they're like this company of the newcomers that are making things even worse for everybody. Do you want to sneak past them? Do you want to hide, or do you just want to attack them? And a lot of times, because the combat was so fun, I would find myself just being like, no, fuck it, attack them, fuck those guys. And we'll go, jump into this combat system that I thought was really engaging. And I think this is super interesting when the main character's motivation is basically kill all these red company people too. And I'm hopping on board with that for narrative reasons, but also because it's fun. And I think it's really nice when video games marry those things together.
Yeah, no, the gameplay is definitely a highlight here.
Yeah.
It flows extremely well. I think they call it's like simultaneous turn-based combat system.
Hmm.
So it's essentially it's like bullet time, right? Like in the
Yeah.
Matrix.
Hmm.
You have like a specific window where everything stops. You can select your action, and then when you're done, things just happen. Like you don't control it at that point. It's just
Yeah.
and it really leads to I hate using this word, but it's like cinematic in the sense, right? Like it's like uh and it's awesome when you do something like crazy like on there.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, that works. You have to like not only time your shots, you also have to like position them to like, oh, it's gonna actually land here,
Yeah.
right? And when that happens, or where you can get like a hit where it's like multiple, multiple characters, that's also like really great.
Yeah, because they give you the information about what the enemies are going to do. So they'll tell you this enemy is going to, like, they'll have a gun icon that says they're going to shoot on the next turn. And if you press the space bar on PC, it will tell you who they're going to shoot. If there are bullets in midair, it will show you the path they're going to
Yeah.
follow. So it leads to, like you said, that cinematic experience of like, Tizo takes one step to the right to sidestep a bullet and then goes into his own like counterattack stuff. Or like, I think with once I hit unpause and everything plays out, the timing is right where if I dodge roll right now, I will dodge through this shotgun spread, and then I'll pop out the other side ready to punish the guy that took the shot. It leads to like just the perfect marriage, I think, of like planning out all of this stuff perfectly, and then you hit that button, watch it all play out, and if the dominoes all drop at the same time, you're like, that was perfect. That was a perfect turn. I feel awesome about my strategy here in turn-based combat. I like, I like a lot of games with turn-based combat where you just kind of hammer on the attack button. I'm playing Dragon Quest 1 right now. I'm hitting the attack button most of the time. But in this one, you can't take a single action for granted.
No.
And it's when it all pays off, it's like chef kiss. This is the like some of the best turn-based combat I've done.
Yeah, and it's pretty, and it helps that it's pretty well balanced too. Like it's not. I mean, at certain points, you can be a lot stronger than some of the enemies, but for the most part, like you do a wrong move and it's like in one turn, like you will, like in a second you're gonna go down, right?
Yeah.
Because usually there's a lot more enemies on the screen than you have like characters.
Yeah.
And and they have range because a lot of the red companies, they have like guns and things of that,
Yep.
which it's expected, right, to fits like with the narrative. And sometimes you just have maybe like a bow and arrow, or maybe not even that. You don't even have any. ranged weapons, so you have to like get up close,
Hmm.
and that
Um,
really helps.
yeah, the different characters that you play as throughout the different acts all have like really different styles. So, Tizo uses the bow, the Arco, which is where the name of the game comes from. So with him, you're long range, and like you said, like it'll show you like this character is going to move over to this spot on their turn. So it's like, let me shoot a bow, let me shoot an arrow to like lead into the spot where they're running. And then you hit unpause and the guy runs and the arrow comes in. Perfect timing, takes him out. Feels great. The second character that you get in the next act is all melee fighting. So completely changes up the way you approach things. And it's all about like interrupting. So it's like this character is going to shoot. If I use an attack with an interrupt status, then they can't get that shot off, and I'm fine being right next to them when they have a shotgun. And then eventually they start to bring these play styles together, and so it's kind of a rare game. I feel like I think you're right on. Like the balance is pretty much perfect through the whole game. Like early game, your toolkit is pretty limited. You've got skill trees that you fill out as you go through, but the early game fights are really like teaching you the basics and stuff like that, but still really, really engaging. You can't take turns off. And then you get to the end and like shit's on fire. There's multiple people. There's bullets everywhere. Like there's very little safe space on the screen in some of these late game fights. But you have a lot of tools to deal with all that stuff too. And so for the whole game, I feel like you're constantly right on this line of like, I need to strategize hard. The game is difficult, but also not there was never a fight where I was like, this is too much. I don't know what the fuck they want from me. Like literally never happened in this game. There were a lot of fights that I lost a lot. Or there's a lot of fights that it has an instant restart. If it's not going well, you can just hit restart, retry the combat. I did that a lot, but it was always something where I felt like, just adjust your strategy rather than being like, this is a bullshit encounter or something like that. It's just really excellent.
Yeah, no, I think that for a game as chaotic as this, like you would think there would be more like hiccups when it comes to like the balance, but it's really, I always play games trying to like break them too.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, let me try to do this. Can I get like overpowered this way? Is there a way that I can potentially lock myself out from like
Hmm.
progression? Can I make something impossible? There's really no way. Like you can essentially like if you're good enough like with your timing and stuff, you can like not even engage with the skill tree and gets I mean it'll be extremely difficult.
Yeah.
That's but it can be done. But then even if you make sure that you try to take all the encounters you can and like and get skill points and try to
Hmm.
fill those skills, even then you're still gonna find situations where it can be like fairly challenging. I mean, there's a few of these like encounters where I think you kind of have to like know that they're gonna happen. These are all
Mm.
optional. It's like and you have to know. There's like I forget the names. There's like the little green dudes.
Oh yeah, like they're like little goblins or something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
there's like
Yeah.
a little like mine shaft that you can go
Hmm.
down under, and there's like a bunch of them there. And there's one specific encounter there where there's like they're just completely surrounding you, and there's like has I think there's at least like 30 or 40 of them, and they're all not necessarily attacking all at the same time, but attacking like a lot of them are attacking, and you're right in the center, so you're being so there's like on each
Hmm.
side, and it's just you're just like you need you if you've picked like your skill tree right, you can get like a move where you can like dash and like bulldoze them through the side. But if you didn't, you're kind of there's no way you're gonna beat them. There's no
Yeah. I think I know the one you're talking about, and I think I walked into that mine shaft, got the option to fight them, and was like, we'll leave them alone. They seem like they're doing fine down here.
yeah.
On that note, what do you think of like the fantasy elements of this game? Because there are like like you said, like these goblin like creatures. There's magic. There are ghosts, like literal ghosts. There's undead that you fight in certain places. What do you think about that? Kind of mixed in with this other like very serious narrative.
I think it's neat. Like I want to just like reemphasize. I think that the story's trying to do like an alternative to like the typical like Western or even like Eastern fantasies that we're getting.
Hmm.
It's trying to be focused specifically like on the Americas. Um, Essentially, like like if what if Tolkien was like was an indigenous like Mexican person.
Mm.
um so it still borrows a lot from the stuff that like we know, as you're saying, you got like raves, you have scale, but these are things that also like exist like within like these cultures, like
Yeah.
there's so many like ghost stories, like curses and all these
Yeah.
other things. Those are in essentially like universal.
Hmm. I thought the way some of those were used in like climactic narrative scenes were really interesting, specifically with the ghosts and the undead. The other stuff, I think, like you said, it adds like an extra flavor to it that like I'm not I don't know. I didn't love it, but it's not I'm not mad at it either. It's just kind of like just kind of neat flavor in the
Yeah.
world that we have a little bit of fantasy going on too, for
Yeah,
sure.
it can be. I mean, some of it you can. I mean, you can. If I was gonna be like not, not generous. It's it can be generic, but I don't know, like what game really like skeletons, wraiths, ghosts.
You fight
Like you just
skeletons in
see
every
them.
video game. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just like you can't really fault one for just having that like in its face value. At least this one tries to do something like interesting where the setting is something that you don't really get to see.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And those ghosts also play into another like gameplay mechanic, which is like this morality that you pick up. So, like I said, as you travel through the different places, you go to the different towns, you're presented with a lot of choices about who you want to help, who you want to harm, and kind of choices you want to make. One character's storyline is all about like this kind of fantasy, like this curse that they're dealing with. Do they want to deal with that, or do they want to kind of follow their own original motivations? And as you go, the choices you make play into this morality system. They call it, I think they call it guilt in the game, and you get like a rating on it. Like I got an achievement when I beat the game for beating it with low guilt. And I think the main way that this manifested for me, I don't know if it manifests in other ways, is if your character has guilt accumulated, you'll get these ghosts that show up in combat. And unlike everything else, they don't freeze in between turns. The ghosts are always moving. And so what they do is they kind of harry you. You need to like run around, avoid the ghosts, because if they touch you, they do a bunch of damage.
Yeah.
And this is a low numbers RPG. Like a character that has high HP will have like 7 HP. So a ghost hitting you for 2 HP while you're planning your turns is like, you want to avoid that. So in one of the acts, I had a character that had pretty high guilt, and there were ghosts everywhere, like most of the time. And it felt really, it felt like a nice like spice in combat. I don't know that I really think it does great narratively in here, but for combat purposes, it's really neat to have something that doesn't play by the turn-based rules in the turn-based combat.
Yeah, I mean, I think it serves two purposes and it does them fairly well. I think
Hmm.
it does serve a narrative purpose because
Yeah.
it's supposed to be, you're trying to get revenge, but what are you willing to do,
Yeah.
I guess,
Hmm.
um, to get that? And obviously, depending on what you do, you'll have all this guilt, which you're gonna have like more like ghosts. And in turn, it's like I guess maybe you can argue that like maybe they're not put the two purposes that like the guild system is supposed to do. I don't think they coalesce, come together very well because then you're being rushed as a result when you're like in combat. Now you can get this. There's like an option which is essentially quote unquote easy mode, which like you can take that out
Mm.
of like in the settings.
Okay.
Because essentially they function as like this timer or penalty, right? For you to like make like decisions. And yeah, and,
Yeah.
and depending how you're playing, which a lot of this is not random, but you don't really know like what the result's gonna be for some of these things, especially like on
Yeah.
like a first or like second playthrough. You can just get like a guilt for something that you think you're doing right. It's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this, and it's like you help this person, but then you realize like, oh no, that person was actually the bad guy.
That stuff's done really well. Like you're always making these decisions with not much information. It's just like one person is like, hey, those raiders over at that camp,
Yeah.
they stole my shit. And then you go over there and you kill all the raiders, and they're like, that the guy that told you we were raiders, that's the raider. Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? And you're like, you just slaughtered like an entire camp of people.
Yeah.
And you're like, oops,
Yeah.
really thought I was doing the right thing here. So they do that really well.
Yeah, and it's like, and that's, this is like a game I think that once you, it gets better on subsequent playthroughs,
Mm.
right? I think it's very different. Like the first game, like the first time you play it, and then like the subsequent times you play it, uh, you're gonna have a fairly different experience. Because the first time, it's like you're gonna be shocked by a lot of the decisions and things that you're gonna get. You're gonna,
Mm-hmm.
which leads to like this guild system. It's like, oh, you're not really gonna know how to mitigate it. Now there is, you can buy cookies from a specific character, and the
Yes.
cookies they're so good, right? That like for that specific chapter, like, you forget like your guilt
Uh-huh.
for, because they remind you of like of a better time. And then there's also there's other situations where like you get different sorts of ghosts. I don't know if you've
Yes.
seen this, like the
Mm-hmm.
little mouse
Oh, I
one.
don't think I saw that.
Yeah, there's
I
like a
saw like, there's like a type of ghost that you can attack and there's a type that you can't. I think that's what I saw.
no, there's like there's a situation specifically like in chapter. This is not going to be crazy sports. Just like in
Sure.
chapter 4, there's just going to be, there's one option that you can take, and if you, depending on what you do, there's like this little mouse there, and essentially if you decide to, I guess get the stupid fruit, instead of
Mm-hmm.
that, the mouse is going to haunt you for the rest of the for the rest of the chapter.
Wild. Okay. That's interesting. I think the reason I didn't think the guild system did a lot for me narratively is that like I feel like my own personal reaction to choices that I made and how things played out was really strong. Like I got tricked a bunch of times and that feels bad, but it didn't really seem to affect the narrative like to me. And the things that I did, the ways that characters interacted with me didn't really feel like it didn't really feel like it made a lot of difference. There might be multiple endings to it. I'm not sure. There's two. Okay.
Yeah, there's
Maybe
two.
like a low guilt and a high guilt ending.
I don't know if that's necessarily the that's like the prerequisite to getting each. Now, the thing that the game, and this is to its credit, but also it hurts the game, it just
Hmm.
hides the story and outcomes. Not necessarily like with endings, just like different like branches and different options that happen as through your playthrough extremely well.
Hmm.
Where, yeah, it's really hard to know like I did this in the beginning of the chapter, but
Hmm.
how did that affect, like an hour later, like and it does, like there is like specific things that you can do that, now the guilt
Mm,
stuff, I
yeah.
think the guilt is not necessarily, I don't know if that's measured, like to your point. I don't know if it's like specific, because a lot of games have like karma systems, which traditionally
Yeah.
like don't work. I think they're horrible. I think they're usually like a bad, like it's
They're
too
simplistic
cartoony.
at best,
Yeah.
usually. Yeah.
And I think this is probably, I think that the developers probably had issues with that and were trying to think of something where this might be a way where it can be more impactful, where there might not necessarily be something that's going to affect the overall story, because there's so
Hmm.
many other things that can affect the story. Um, but it will affect, I guess, the gameplay, the combat, which is probably the most when you actually think about actual like weight, it's probably the most like consequential, right? Because it's like,
Hmm.
oh, like these fights are just getting like a lot more difficult now because I have like 700 ghosts around me.
Did happen sometimes for sure. Yeah, the effect of the guild system on combat was really strong. Um, there were choices that I made that I know like directly like closed off uh certain NPCs to me. There were parts where it's like I'm going to try to trick somebody and it doesn't go well and then suddenly I have to fight 11 dudes in the street or something like that. Like the consequences for your choices, I think, felt good, um, good or bad. And it's just like I don't really know how that guilt system plays into stuff. If it was making a bunch of like subtle changes under the hood of like, this character would be nice to me versus telling me to fuck off for choices I've made in the past, that's cool. It's just
Yeah.
really hard to see that, like you said.
Yeah, I would love to get a guide for this, just to see like the different options, because it seems to be like fairly like robust, like variations.
Yeah, I don't know how much variance there is, but with the amount of choices that you make and the amount of times you might revisit locations in some of the acts, like I can see that for sure. Or like, that example where I slaughtered an entire camp of innocent people. Maybe they had something that they could have helped. Like maybe there was a merchant there that could have healed me or something like that. Had I not done that, but that's
Yeah,
for a repeat playthrough, I guess. Did you notice your repeat playthrough like giving you
yeah,
different stuff?
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot, like a lot.
Okay. Good. Good. I'm glad to hear
Yeah,
that.
there was a lot of different things, which we'll get into it a little bit more when we get to, I guess, the
Sure.
spoiler stuff. But I was really surprised because this is not a very long game, relatively
Yeah.
speaking. So to see that, so it's one where actually the length that it's not that long, and then there's just so much different like varieties when it comes to not only like what you can see like in the story, but also what you get as a result. Because also resources can be fairly limited too
Yep.
here, so it's
Mhm.
like it's really like important, and what you get, because sometimes you can just have like no healing items at all, like
Mhm.
for like a long stretch of time, and that also like ups the challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking like the amount of variation, there might be more variation than we think if you're thinking about it as like, because it's told kind of anthological. It's anthology style for a little while. You play Tizo's act, and then you play Itse's act, and then you play a Forenchio's act, and they're separate. They're not like you don't intersect with other characters. Like you might see them,
Yeah,
but they're separate stories, and so maybe it's easier to build in a lot of variation in three small chunks rather than one, like 3 2-hour chunks rather than one, like the entire game
yeah.
being 9 10 hours long with a ton of variation at every step along the way. um that might explain it. Like if you found it very different on different playthroughs, there are like major plot decisions that you can make that I can very easily see how it would be different had you chosen to do this versus this at a big key moment. But if those little decisions are also changing things more than you notice, that's really neat. And that's one of the cool things about the spoiler section that we're going to have is talking about those differences for sure. So, speaking of the spoiler section, it will be coming soon. But first, we always give a little quick wrap up and a recommendation before we get there. So, Luis, we always kind of ask the question, who would we recommend Arco to? And then if we have any kind of wrap up thoughts. But um, yeah, who would you recommend this to?
It's a good question. I would definitely recommend this to folks who want to play something a little different yet familiar, right? It like
Hmm.
pushes on things that you're somewhat like used to, but does it in a way where it really, you're really gonna feel like you're interacting with something that you haven't seen before. And I think
Hmm.
that's where a lot of the renown that this game has gotten comes from. Because it's not like, I mean, I'll just be frank, it's not like the greatest thing ever. It's not. It's good, um, but I think it just does things like when you actually look at everything that it does, it's like, okay, what's actually like what's like this? Like what actually is like comparable?
Yeah.
And and you're like you're an expert on this. You have a show, you play how many games, like a year, right? It's like, what can you actually compare it to?
Hmm.
Like that comes like fairly close to like through its gameplay.
Yeah. I don't really find a lot of like easy direct comparisons. It's like you can compare the combat in Arco to something like an Into the Breach, or like that
Yeah,
John Wick game that they made, John Wick Hex. The combat kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Those like perfect information turn-based systems where you have like free movement around, but it's like that's just the combat, and then the stories are obviously super different. And we already talked about how from a narrative perspective this does stand, in not alone but in relatively small company, as far as like games telling this story about colonization, especially from the indigenous perspective. Like I said, we've got a lot of games where even if the narrative's not like about colonization, like you participate in a little light colonization in a lot of games, but this perspective is really interesting, and like the um kind of that historical fiction aspect of it too, where it's not like colonization in space or something like that. This is
yeah.
our real world. These are real stories that are being, told. Fantasy wise, it's fiction, but it's not hard to like look back at history and be like, yeah, there's a lot of real analogs here. So it is a fairly unique game. And then we talked about the art being unique and stuff like that. So um, fans, I think people who really gravitate to indie games are seeking out novel experiences and like really personal storytelling. And I think that both of those are pretty easy to recommend Arco for. And
Yeah,
then like for everyone out there who just like really loves great turn-based combat, Arco's really good turn-based combat.
I got one. If you like
Yeah.
Undertale,
If
I
you
think
like
this
Undertale,
I think
okay.
this would be a good a good like contrast to that. There's certain things that like tonally that are somewhat similar.
Okay. I got an idea in my head. Maybe we'll revisit that in a couple minutes. But yeah, that's interesting. Um, so yeah, Arco is a good game. As both of us have said, good. I wouldn't call it a great game, but it's a good game. I'm glad I played it. Definitely something worth a lot to celebrate in here. We'll say that. So we'll talk more about the story, especially in the spoiler section. But before we get there, we always talk about the work that the guest does. So as I said at the top, Luis is a writer and a critic. You can read Luis's reviews and other written works, lots of places around the internet. So, Luis, tell the people about your work.
Yeah, you can. So I've been doing a lot of work in print media recently. I'm a columnist for Debug Magazine, which is a magazine based out of like the UK. We mainly focus on like indie games.
Hmm.
So I have a column there, and I do some reviews. Yeah, NPR. You can find me there like on occasion. Yeah, a lot of places on the internet. I don't know when this is gonna be out, but around this time, I just did a review of the new of the Moment game that
Oh
came
yeah,
out,
yeah.
Winter's Warmth, which is was awesome. So
Hmm.
definitely, I mean, I thought it was gonna be pretty good because I enjoyed the Snufkin one, but this one I was like, oh wow, like they definitely hit a stride
Hell
with
yeah.
this. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't know anything about the Moomins except for like my little niece loves them and thinks they're cute, and I was like, oh, it's okay, so it's like a kids game or whatever. But
It-
um,
yeah,
it
but
it
it
sounds
gives
like
you a
there's a
lot.
lot more substance to it than
Oh,
that.
it's
Like
a
I'm selling
lot.
it short.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's like it's one of those things that's like it's clearly aimed for children, but it doesn't hold back,
Okay.
as an adult, you go back to it and you can really see like what the main author, Tove Johnson, like she was like going for. I
Hmm.
mean, in that game, like a squirrel dies in the first 10 minutes, freezes to death.
Oh, geez.
So
Freezes to death.
yeah,
Brutal.
yeah, and it's your fault. Talk about guilt, right?
Oh
Okay,
no.
so it's like yeah, so took one from Arco, right?
Yeah. uh, good stuff. Anything else other than those places that you mentioned that you would like to direct people to?
That's mainly it. I mean, you can just find me like on Blue Sky, at
Hmm.
Aquos Points, at Blue Sky. I'm everywhere when it comes to like the internet. So yeah, and I'm giving a shout out if you listen to this. Just like just like reach out if you want me to like if you have like a podcast or anything. I'm
Hmm.
always down to do this, especially before I move across time zones, and
Yeah.
it's gonna get a little harder to.
You'll get to experience what I experienced for the first like 30 episodes of this show, which is being 14 hours ahead or whatever of the East Coast. And basically, I could only record at 8 in the morning over there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm looking at. That's why I've been, like, trying to, like, talking to folks like, "Hey, like, let's do," because I know it's gonna get difficult for me to
Yeah.
do that.
For sure. Well, definitely recommend people check out your writing. I always enjoy reading it when I come across it. And yeah, I'll put links down in the show notes for places to easily find you, including your Blue Sky profile, so people can follow and keep up to date with what you're working on. Always enjoy chatting with you here on the show and enjoy reading what you write. So wanna put that out for more people for sure. I did most of my plugs at the top of the show. The last one that I didn't do is the Tales from the Backlog Discord server. I know a lot of people in the Discord server played Arco, so if you want to jump in and talk about the game with us this week, that is a good place to do that. There is an invite link in the show notes. It's open to the public. And yeah, come in, join the cool group of folks we got in there, and we'd love to have you. So, with that being said, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, it will be full spoiler time for Arco. All right, before we get to full spoiler time for Arco, I'd like to say thank you to the patrons who help support the show. A big hearty thank you and shout out goes out to Chris Nelson, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Nick Vicori, Soccer, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Jenny E., Marcus O'Neill, Drellish, Rigamort, Silcanet, Levi, John E., Aliassi, Aaron, Alan Kress, Doug T., Retro Overdrive, Magic Crow, Curly Bright, Ian L., Steve Yeager, Trash Dog Actual, Delaney and Jack McBride, Michael Lassen, Michael Matuzak, Keith B., Aquacaday, Jake Martin, Mike Kniff, Kugel, and many more. These fine folks have all chosen to support the show and the work I'm doing over on Patreon by kicking me a few bucks a month, and it's much appreciated. It helps out in a lot of different ways, and if you are considering joining them, there is a lot of cool stuff in return. Such as, if you're listening to this episode on the day it comes out, there is a poll running for a game that I'll cover on the show. All paid patrons get to vote in the polls, and we've got some neat stuff in that poll. Shining Force 2, Odin Sphere, Max Payne 2, and Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. So if you want to vote for which of those games you'd like to hear on the podcast, patreon.com/realdavejackson is the place for that and a whole lot more. Once again, thank you for considering doing that. It means a lot to me, and a big thanks to everyone who has signed up. So with all that being said, let's get back to the podcast. Full spoilers upcoming for Arco. All right, we're back. It's full spoiler time for Arco. And before we get into the discussion, a few quick disclaimers. The regular one that we always do is we're not going to talk in a linear walk through the story. This is full spoilers. We're going to spoil a late game revelation soon. So if you don't want to be spoiled on anything in Arco, please go finish the game and then come back. And the other thing is that there are a lot of like plot events that can happen And I might get things wrong. We might not talk about some of them. That's just the way the show always works. I never claim to be the expert on the story in the game in question. So give me a little bit of grace if we get things wrong. And otherwise, we're going to start with talking about the different things that can happen, because I was really interested in how you said, Luis, that your two playthroughs gave you some very different experiences, very different narrative things. So I guess what we'll do is we'll kind of walk through the acts a little bit, not like recap the plot so much, but I am interested in how different things can turn out. So the first thing that I remember that I wrote down is in the prologue, you play as the little kid Tico, who gets ambushed by these newcomers and supposedly killed, not killed. We learn later that Teko is Tizo, that we're playing as later in life. But the thing that I felt led to that was my decision to sneak out of the camp in the middle of the night to go to that spirit tree. And I did have a choice to stay in the camp. So do you know, is that a real choice?
I don't know if it's a real choice, honestly.
Okay.
Because I was on my first playthrough, I essentially did what you did, but on my second time, I I essentially was trying to do everything I could not to, because you have to take the keys right from like your dad. You have to like sneak
Yeah.
into. I was trying to do everything not to do that,
Okay.
and it was essentially just like nothing was actually happening to propel like the story.
Okay.
Maybe there's like a variation of decisions you can make that, but from my understanding, I think all the stories end the same way. I think
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong, and it'll be good if I'm wrong because then that would really prove that like there's so much more that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems like all of, and it's usually right, like it's all this like tragedy that
Yeah.
ends up like in each one. Um, so because I was like which is chapter 4, I was like really shocked by that
Yeah.
one. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
So I had wondered in that prologue, is it one of those choices where like, yeah, you can choose to stay in the camp, but eventually you're going to have to leave and do the thing. It sounds like it's probably like that. The chapter 4 one, like you said, that's probably the biggest like explosive choice, to use a pun there. Is so in chapter 4, you're playing as Afora and Chio, this duo. I think they're brother and sister.
Yes.
Yeah, and they have gotten a hold of this dust, they call it, that they need to turn in for a big payday. It gets stolen from them. They this is why they hate the Red Company. All of these acts and all these different characters, they set you up to show you why each of these characters hates the Red Company. And so this leads them to their refinery to try and get their dust back. And you get a big choice at the end of whether to blow up the refinery or not. So tell me about those choices and how that played out in your game.
Well, this one, like, it kind of just really like caught me just completely like by surprise, right? Because so you go to like a facility where you finally like catch up to like the Red Company and you get the supplies, the so-called dust. I don't know if
Hmm.
these people were the developers were thinking about the nuclear dust. Maybe that's what they're getting there. But yeah, but you're and then you're there, but then as you're coming out, because you can choose to like blow up the facility, if
Hmm.
I remember correctly.
Yep.
I don't actually remember what the other options were
It's
on
either
there.
yes or no. It's like I want to say Chio wants to blow it up and Afur doesn't,
Yeah.
and you get to pick basically like who are you going to side with, and yeah. So it sounds like you picked to not blow it up.
No, no, I picked to blow it up.
Oh, okay. So
Did you
then,
pick not to?
yeah,
Okay, and then how did it end for you?
it ended with Chio dying.
So I think depending on who you pick is who
That's
go
who dies.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Because
I figured.
a 4 died for me.
Okay, that's what
Okay,
I
so
figured
that's
would happen.
interesting. Okay, so that already shows that there's already like a variability between
Yeah,
that one. And obviously they play completely different from one another. So that'll be who you'll bring into Act 5. Okay,
yeah.
that's interesting.
So did it end, because the end of Act 4 with playing as a 4 was really like climactic. It was like a last stand type thing where you're outside of this building and there's just like red company dudes spawning in all the time. You probably kill like 30 of them in this final fight. But a 4 has this like status called like rage or something like that that just makes him do like double damage and a bunch of extra movement. And so like you can go, 1 on 10 and just keep killing these dudes until the fight is over and he rides off to go meet up to go to that bar he meets up with Tizo. Is that how it played out if you're controlling Chio?
Yep. I mean,
Okay.
pretty similar.
Okay. So maybe then that is part of the reason why, unless they wanted to like do two versions of Act 5 where like one where you have a 4 and one where you have Chio, that could be a reason why those characters in Act 5 just kind of feel like accessories rather than main characters anymore
Yeah,
to
it's like
me.
an octopath traveler. Like
Yeah.
it felt very much kind of like that once you get to Act 5.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I do feel like up to that point, everything felt like fairly like substantial. Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you get like a sense of not only like the characters, but like their motivations and the world that they inhabit, like within like
Mhm.
well, their society within like the broader world, right? Which comes not really comes together at Act 5. It comes together as you're playing through the acts, because you kind of interact with different characters at different moments. You
Mhm.
see, you go to certain villages, as you alluded to like earlier in the recording. But yeah, Act 5 is interesting.
It is. We'll get there in a second. I want to ask you about Act 3 though first. So Act 3, you follow the warrior girl, Itse, and apologies if I'm fucking up that pronunciation. I'm doing my best. Is interesting in Act 2, you're playing as Tizo, and you go through this screen, you see this woman just punching the shit out of a tree, and then Act 3 starts, and that's who you're playing as. And her kind of backstory is that she disobeys like this training that she's supposed to do. She goes into a temple that she's not supposed to go into, and she takes this cursed medallion. She gets disowned and exiled from her village and cursed. Um, and so you basically have like this big branching path in her act where you can either go up to this holy ground to lift the curse, or you can go to this arena in the city to like, because her whole thing is she wants to be recognized as a great warrior. And so going to the arena, that's how you get recognized as a great warrior. So have you done both of these in your two playthroughs?
I've only done the you go up and you try to get purified.
Yeah, that seemed like the choice to me. Because then you can't go do the arena.
Yeah, I haven't experienced like what the arena's like. So
Okay. That thing up in the holy grounds is like super interesting. Like the visual of like that giant hand with like the pond, the stone hand with the pond in it, and then you have like that. It's like a boss fight that takes place in her head, where she's like fighting off these ghosts and undead and stuff like that. And her kind of motivation to join this fight against the Red Company is that in that holy water, she has a vision of the Red Company being the end of her people. And so that's why she takes up the fight against them.
yeah, yeah. I kind of want to see what would happen if you go to the arena and see what's
Hmm.
going on. But yeah, it just felt like it's just like my whole motivations, where I was like in my frame of mind for both playthroughs, just led me to this would just be the one thing. Now I would say that is that whole pawn thing, which is like the pawn palm, I guess, right?
Hmm.
It's a palm of like hand. That's the only location that I found to be like a little cheesy, which is
Oh,
like
really?
a hand like sticky like mountain on. It's like too much on the nose. It felt like very much like fantasy that wouldn't fit within like the world that was already established.
Okay.
And it's neat. I'm not saying that. It just felt like a little bit like more like it didn't fit into like the overall setting, especially as somebody who's like has traveled to through a lot of like
Hmm.
Mexico and like Central America and like South America. That's not necessarily something that I've seen before
Hmm.
like that. And the game for the most part like keeps keeps that setting, the inspirations like you know, that makes sense. It's not something that's like completely just like thrown like off kilter and stuff. All this other
Mm,
stuff, I can see like the inspiration. It's like, oh, this is supposed to be like Mayan pyramids, like in the Yucatan. Oh, the salt flats. That's that's like
yeah.
in the Andes. That's like Bolivia. Like all this stuff. So
Hmm. It's an interesting perspective that I just don't have. So, yeah, I just saw that and I was like, that's a cool fucking stone hand with the pond. Like, there's like fungus and shit in the water. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna have to go in that water. Something weird's gonna happen in there.
yeah, yeah.
I just enjoyed that.
Never go into the water that has fungi and algae. But
Yeah,
you got to do what you got to do.
yeah. So was it actually like a religious cleansing that happened in the water, or did she just get some like fungus in her brain and experience something weird that way?
Hey,
We'll never know.
sometimes fungi is part of religion.
Yeah. Um, so that's generally like those are like the big choices that I thought were like kind of the big branching path type choices. We get to the Act 5, and it's worth kind of diving a little bit deeper into Act 5, and we can revisit the other acts later if we feel like we've got something to really dig into. But um, Act 5 brings all the characters together, and you're going to go take the fight to the Red Company headquarters. And there's this boss there named El Gallo, I want to
El
say.
Gallo. So the double L,
Okay.
it's like a Y.
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking
Spanish.
of
So it's
Joey
Joe.
Gallo,
So
former
Gallo. Yeah.
New York Yankees great Joey Gallo.
Okay, you're
Yeah,
speaking
okay.
my language as a
Yeah,
Yankees fan. So thank you. Thank
me
you.
too, yeah. Uh, so, yeah, so you take on El Gallo, and you're on the path to go to the headquarters. You got to get on a train to get there. So Act 3 is broken up into these three segments. There's the train, there's the oil flats, and then there's the oil fields, and then there's the headquarters. Um, there's like an adventure gamey puzzle to like get on the train
Yeah.
unnoticed that I thought was terrible. Like it's easily the worst part of the game for me.
Interesting.
It's just not like, you never done anything like that in the game up until that point. So I spent a long time just being like, what do you want from me? Cause it's like insta fail reload at the beginning if you fuck it up. Anyway, you go through the train, video game train levels kick ass. I thought that was fun. Fighting in close quarters is interesting in this game because usually you're in like these big spaces, and in this one you're like fighting two dudes in a train car.
Yeah, and
So,
you can fall off the train cart.
oh shit, can you?
Yeah,
That's
it's like
fun.
that opening, which I didn't know. So I just like dashed out. I was like, oh, like the character died. And I was like, oh no.
I did a couple times in the early. There's a temple dungeon you go into in Tizo's Act 2, I want to say, where you can just like run off the side of these platforms
Yeah.
and die, and it happened to me so many times until I finally like internalized like, oh, you can't actually just run off the edge. Don't run off the edge. So the train car is a fun. I wonder if because there's some skills that can like push a character back. I wonder if you can like push enemies out the train car if you line it
Yeah,
up
you
right.
can't. And that's like that's actually I think one of the few like OP like moves. But obviously it's
Yeah,
very
sure.
situational. Because that's it. Like
Yeah,
you don't have to like, window down their health. You just like that's one, they're done.
yeah. Um, so you do the train thing. They blow up the train. You go in this the oil fields. You go through those. You get closer and closer to the headquarters, and you go in the headquarters. There, you go through. You like you burn down the buildings as you make your way through the headquarters. I think you have to do that. Maybe it was me just being like, no, fuck the Red Company. Burn all the buildings down. And then you have the boss fight with El Gallo at the end, who this is what the part that I thought was goofy, is him and his like war machine
That was
basically.
crazy. Yeah.
It's a crazy boss fight. It was really fun, but it was really goofy. Think about it in the context of like everything else in the game. So, like there's ghosts and shit. I don't know why it stands out to me as goofy,
Well, it
especially
does
goofy.
feel like because that's the first. I mean, you see machines in the sense of like the train up to that
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
but it does feel like it's like a huge. You're just like you hadn't seen something that mechanized before.
yeah.
Like
It's
this is
one
like a
step
straight
down
up
from
like
him. It's one step down from him being in like a mech.
Yeah, it was like straight like steampunk, which at that point, like the game had no like that just was not part
Yeah.
of the game. It still felt like it felt like high fantasy for lack of better words, right? Like tokenist, like you have the magic and stuff, but it's still there's like a logic within like the world. And then out of nowhere, it's just like dude has like crazy two-hand mech with like a gun, with turret gun out there and stuff. And you're just like, what?
Yeah. It's real weird. It's a very fun boss fight though. Like I really loved it.
Well, I'm glad you did. I hate that boss fight.
Okay. That was the ultimate of like there's chaos, but because it's paused and you can always like take stock of it's chaos everywhere except right here, and right here. So that's where I'm going to send the characters. Like I thought that was really fun. Um, yeah, I thought it was great, but
Yeah, all my because you have three party members
yeah.
for that fight, and two of them died like in the first like 5 minutes, and then
Oh
I
shit.
just had Itse. She was like the only one I had for most of it. So I had to like run up to like the barrels and like punch him
Oh yeah, I did do
down
that.
and that. Yeah. So I had no ranged weapons for like the
Hmm.
whole, and I'm just like, oh, I finished it. I didn't like die, which was surprising
Yeah,
with that,
got
but
it
it
done.
was not easy.
You know what's was weird is the way the beginning of the act works is like you're in the bar, there's a dude in there who will sell you a bunch of stuff so you can like prep for this final chapter. And every time I failed the train thing, I had to go back to the bar and re-equip and stuff like that. And it didn't occur to me until much later to save while doing the train thing. But the result of that was the time that I remembered to save, I was just really like mad. I failed the train thing legit like 15 times. Like I couldn't figure it out.
Interesting.
And so I'm also like notably dog shit at adventure games. Very bad at them. Like point and click adventures, inventory puzzle type shit, which is what that train thing is like. Um, so the time that I saved, I didn't buy anything from the merchant because I was just clicking in a hurry to get through. So I went into the final chapter. Something I did made it so that I got like 350 gold to spend at that merchant, which is like you can buy everything. You can just be loaded with bandages and stuff. But the time that I actually like made progress through it, I didn't. So I just had I had like a random assortment of fruits, and like each character had two bandages and stuff like that. And I got the final boss done and stuff with those limitations. But the whole time I was like, you could have 45 bandages right now. That would be
You
nice, wouldn't it?
you had more resources than I did. I completely forgot the structure of chapter 5 because up to that
Mm.
point, kind of get used to going back and forth really
Yeah, yeah.
in most chapters, and that one after the train, that's it. Like you're
Yep.
making you're essentially a gauntlet all the way to the final boss. So I did
Yeah.
not purchase anything, and I saved when you're at the train station.
Hmm. So no more merchant. Yep.
So I was like, I was screwed. I was just playing like, it's just straight up what just
Just on hard mode. Yeah.
ul- ultra hard mode. Yeah, it's like yeah.
uh, there's also a lot of the other locations in the previous acts. Like there's usually like plants. Like you can get some healing herbs or some fruit or something like that. And in the oil fields, it's just there's nothing out there. It's
He's
just
dead
oil
and
fields.
barren. Yeah.
Yeah. One interesting choice that I remember in there is like when you first get out to the oil fields, you encounter like a group of laborers and some red company that are like their bosses or they're like their owners. I wasn't sure what the dynamic there was, or like guards or something. And so I killed them right away because I was like, people like be free. Like you don't have to work the oil fields for these people. And as soon as I killed them, they were like, those were our protection. We might as well be dead now. Thanks, asshole. And I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah, I
Okay.
did the same.
Yeah. Another good example of the game being like, yeah, make hasty choices and see what happens.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I really like that. It feels like an RPG like tabletop campaign, and
Yeah.
that's like you roll. I mean, it's not really that much rolling for, but you make the decision once you go. You just that's it. The game just progresses like with that, and and it doesn't really, it's more of like it doesn't really tell you what's gonna happen. Often games, it's like you'll have your prompt, and for the most part, it's like what's gonna happen, or at least something.
Yeah.
This one really plays on that with you.
Yeah, a lot of games will give you like the good choice and the evil choice, and the good choice always gives you a good option or a good outcome, and the evil choice will be like, well, I guess you did an evil thing. Hope you're happy with that.
Yeah,
And
you fight a bunch of
Arco's often is like, here are your two choices. One seems good, one seems evil, but the good choice is like, no, you don't know this situation. You just made a horrible mistake.
Yeah,
Which I think is really interesting.
it is interesting. It might force you to just be evil all the time, but yeah, it's
Well, it's interesting because like I wonder like who would go through that scenario and not kill those guards, because you're like, oh, these people are being oppressed, I want to help them out, and you end up making their life a lot harder.
yeah.
Even if their life was already really hard, you thought you were going to help, you actually made things worse, which I think is within like this context of like the story about people being colonized, like I think is interesting that it's just like not as simple as like, yeah, just kill all the newcomers and life will be better for everybody. Like I think things have like progressed, I think, a little bit further down where like it's not that simple right now.
No, it's not. But I think that's one of the one of my main gripes with the game,
Okay.
narratively speaking, which is like I agree with you, but it's like the game doesn't really narratively, it doesn't really delve deep enough within like those complexities to make that feel anything but like almost like a both sides type of thing. You know what I mean? It's like,
Mm,
yeah, like yeah, it could happen, but like honestly, like why would in the situation of these characters, like from every meaning the characters that you play as, would you actually even want to feel sympathy for these for the Red Company after like, especially once you get to like late chapter 4 and then chapter 5, you're just like
hmm.
I don't really care like
Right. I think that within like the grand story of this, I think it's really interesting that um the game, once it gets to this like big climax, it focuses on Tizo, like very closely focuses on Tizo. And you're left to kind of just think about the rest of it, like think about the rest of the region and the rest of like this history. Um, and you get those little explorations of like the effect of the newcomers and the Red Company on like the people. You get those in those little interactions, like the one I just talked about with the workers in the field, or like some people in the villages and stuff like that. A lot of them are like negative, but they're not all. So
no.
I can see what you mean when you're saying like it can come off a little like both sidesy, because there are one of the things that I think is like good is that not all of the newcomers are like cartoonishly evil and we're just like, yeah, fuck these, we're here to take your land
But
and stuff
most
like
are
that.
though. Most are, and the
The
ones
Red
that really
Company for
make an
sure are.
impact, like most that really make like an impact on like the narrative, and the ones that really stick with you. I mean,
Yeah.
like El Gallo just might as well be like
Yeah.
just like
He might as well, I think he literally is cackling during the
yeah,
fight. Like,
yeah.
I agree with you there. It's just like there are some like normal people that just like live there and like they're complicit in it to a certain extent, but they're just kind of normal people. But I agree with you that the plot critical characters, like the Red Company people, they are all um, very simply portrayed. This is where we get into one thing that I think is super interesting about the storytelling in Arco, and one thing that I think doesn't work very well, is in this Act 5, you have Tizo, who's leading the party, you have Itse, and then you have whoever didn't die in Act 4. And those other two characters, Itse, and then for me it was a 4, um, they're just there with Tizo. Like I don't feel like they express a lot of motivation other than fucking things up. And then when the story becomes about Tizo, like when you're chasing El Gallo through the oil fields and stuff like that, Tizo starts to get these hallucinations about his family. Um, that's when you find out that he's the kid from the prologue that you played as. And it becomes very clear that like this story of Arco, it feels to me that this is Tizo's story and that we took a break in the middle of it to explore some other characters. Those other characters don't tie in well enough with Tizo for me to like tie it all together in a really cohesive way. Like you get to the end and you're like, "Oh, we're back like really diving into Tizo." And the other characters they're off screen. Like they're not even there. They show up after this is all over. So they kind of feel like afterthoughts to me once you finish their little vignette in their individual acts. That's the thing that like it got to the end and like I like the ending for Tizo, even if it's like a little poetic in like a little too poetic sort of way, but it was like a nice ending for Tizo. And the way that you can kind of zoom out and be like, we did it. We'll talk about this. But I just want to say, like, this is the thing in Act 5 specifically, where we're supposed to tie all these character storylines together. It feels like we, like, abandoned two of them to
Yeah.
focus on Tizo, and then the game is over.
Yeah, and I mean, since this is a deep dive podcast, right? So
Yeah.
it's a lot of that I think speaks to I don't want to say torture development of the game, but some of like the difficulties. So initially, it was definitely like just based really like on El Gallo, and a lot of let's call it the flavor of the Americas was not really part of the game as we see it now.
Okay.
And then Fire was brought into the game, and he added a lot of these things
Mm-hmm.
to it. So I don't know if he specifically brought in the other, you know, the Itse and like the two sibling characters
Mm-hmm.
to it, but definitely like made things more like cohesive and made them make more sense to like our actual like world where we can actually like draw like one-to-one comparisons. One of the things that he stated in an interview is that the initial structure, how he wanted it to be, was you have the prologue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and the structure will go by essentially the age of the characters.
Okay.
Well, and then when you actually get to see Tiso, for that would be, which is chapter 1, that would be chapter 4.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then you get into chapter 5. Now, one of the issues that they ran into like with development is because there's like all these branching paths, there's like all this like dialogue trees essentially that come out of it. They had like a really difficult time like putting all that stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
Um so they essentially settled on the structure that you see now. Which yeah, which kind of just leads to this situation where yeah, well, it does feel. I mean, I agree with you. Like you have like essentially chapter 3 and chapter 4 feel almost like a flavor of the whole world
Mm-hmm.
instead of an actual situation where okay, this is like an actual like substantial part of the story that actually is going to have a payoff at the
Mm-hmm.
end, which it doesn't really have a payoff. And not saying that they should be like, if Tizo's the main character, Tizo's the main character, right? But yeah, it's like you did all that with them so they can like bury this guy, you know?
Yeah.
So,
So that's why I said earlier, I wonder if I would have felt more if it would have felt like more consistent if just Tizo was there the whole time and you just picked up these other characters in in act 3, you meet Itse and you pick her up on her quest. And then in Act 4, you meet the two siblings, and then one of them dies. And, the story, obviously, there would have to be a lot of like reworking, but I don't think like the grand story would really change other than maybe Tizo's like personality is not one where he's just going to pick up a group of people to travel with. Like until the very end, when everyone has very clear like motivations that are all the exact same, then he's like, all right, we'll travel together and stuff like that. But that's kind of why I was a little disappointed when I finished the game, of just that feeling of like Tizo's story felt very magnetic. It felt very clearly like this is the main character. And the others had their time, but now it's Tizo's time, and the others are just hanging out until the end. And yeah, they kind of at the end of the game they bury Tizo, and then they give you like one ending slide talking about like what happened with that character after the events of the game. But that's really all that we get. And having them tied in more would have made me care about the group rather than being so focused on Tizo, I think.
Yeah. Now there is another ending which I haven't experienced it, and I don't know. Maybe maybe it'll be more focused on the other characters, but I don't know.
Yeah, I want to say, because I got an achievement, a Steam achievement at the end that said like finish the game with low guilt. So that makes me think that there's a high
You
guilt
got the
ending.
good, like you got the good ending
Yeah.
probably. Yeah.
That
Well,
makes me think that there's some sort of ending where like Tizo probably still dies, but he doesn't feel peace in his last moments like he does in the ending that I got.
mm,
That's my guess.
so it's still based on. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I
yeah,
find it really hard to believe that there would be another ending that's like we're putting the spotlight on Itze at the end. I just don't think that that's the case. And if I'm wrong, that's cool. I just don't think so. Also, so I wanted to get your take on the ending. Then, did you get the same ending, the like
yeah.
low guilt
I
ending?
got the both for both of them because, I mean, you're kind of like incentivized, right? Because it's like having high guilt. You just have all these ghosts in combat.
Yeah,
It's like I don't want to deal with that. So you're kind of, and I kind of tailored my second playthrough to get as little guilt as possible.
yeah, that makes sense from a mechanical perspective, but also just like I didn't feel like Tizo or any of the other characters would be characters who would just like outright do evil things to people that you didn't think were evil. So like I accumulated some guilt because I made some mistakes, like I said, slaughtering that camp of innocent people. But I never it was, they never gave me a choice to like obviously do something fucked up, and I would just like take it
Yeah. Well,
and get high guilt that way. I'd be
yeah.
curious. I didn't look it up. I maybe should have. But I guess I didn't really think about the possibility of another ending until we started recording, because the ending that we got, I don't know, it seems canon-ish to me.
It seems like the good ending, like the whole like
Yeah,
the sprouting of the new sacred tree. I mean, the fact it ends in the
at the
essentially
sacred
at the
tree.
beginning,
Yep.
right? So
Yeah, bringing that back. El Gallo runs away from the facility. Tizo chases him through the oil fields all the way to the spirit tree. You have like a one-on-one boss fight where he just like can't do shit because he's too scared of Tizo. Um, Tizo gets shot at some point. He's like really badly wounded, but it ends with you just like pounding El Gallo's face in, like with your fists, like brutally killing him in front of the spirit tree. And then Tizo's been whittling something throughout the game, and it turns out it's a gift for the spirit tree. One of the prologue things is like figuring out a gift to give to it that you never get to because Teiko got ambushed at the spirit tree. So the ending that we got, Tizo lays down next to the spirit tree. He puts his gift down. He dies, and you get some flavor text that says, "Leaning against the sacred tree, you finally feel some peace." And so it's a good ending for Tizo. He got his revenge, and then Itze and Afura in my game came to bury him. What I think was interesting about this is thinking about it in the context of the greater story of the Red Company, the newcomers coming to this land and stuff like that. Like Tizo got his revenge, and it felt good to do that. It felt good to beat the shit out of El Gallo there. But nothing really changes in the greater story. There's like a dramatic irony, I think, that the player has, because you know how this turned out. And so you can feel good about Tizo getting his revenge, but like I said at the beginning, I think there's like this melancholy over all of this, that like it's kind of a drop in the bucket. Like, is the Red Company even destroyed? Like, or did you just destroy one of their buildings and one of their bosses? Like, the Red Company is probably going to be back. The newcomers are not going to stop coming. You didn't change history. You just got a very local revenge. And I think that's like, I think that's good storytelling.
Yeah, I do like that in the game as well. And you kind of, and some of it you can actually like see like in the environment, like you just see like the, those oil fields, which once you see the sacred tree, you see, oh, that's probably that area you were in the first game, like in the prologue,
Mm,
probably that whole, and it's like, and it's just completely unrecognizable.
yeah.
Barren, it looks like absolutely like horrible.
Hmm.
uh and it's like, yeah, you took them down, but it's like, look, look how it looks around there, you
Yeah.
know. And I guess the whole, the sprout of like a new tree, it's kind of, I guess, saying that there will be like some regeneration, like in the future, like some hope. But
Yeah. Yeah.
like, how long is that going to take to like clean up that
Hmm.
process and everything? Yeah, it leaves you like that. I mean, I'm just gonna say something
Yeah. Yeah.
about just like, well, this is like just like violence as like the main force of like action in video games,
Hmm.
which is obviously, this is like very like abstract and relatively speaking. But it's like, I have usually like an issue with these things where it's like, okay, you're trying to do like something hopeful on it, but it's like the only thing that you essentially like show when it comes to like gameplay, and how you, though your main pool of like interaction within the world is essentially like, you know causing havoc and like, and murder. And that's not something that, at least when it comes to like the ending, it's like explored. Like, you kind of see it within like certain actions where you get like guilt and everything like within the game. But
Hmm.
I mean, this is a wider discussion. I don't think that, Arco is essentially like egregious in this or anything, but that is like a big issue with like games in general, though, where it's like you do all this stuff, but it's like, and you get this ending, but it's like, yeah, but like you're probably pound per pound the worst person to ever live. Like, like it's
Yeah.
like,
The Nathan Drake thing. Yeah.
yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah, that's the worst person to ever live. Yeah, definitely.
yeah. I do agree. I think that, um, when we think about the ways that gameplay mechanics and narratives intertwine, combat like limits, I think, the full extent of like how, like, I guess it limits the effectiveness of certain types of stories and certain
Yes.
types of characters. If your primary interaction in video games is fighting, which it most of the time it is, in revenge stories, I happen to think that like the good ones will reckon with the violence in an interesting way. And I already talked about how I think that the fact that the combat in Arco is so fun made me jump at violent, choices the way that Tizo probably does. Tizo's characterized early on as like he rolls into town, he's covered in blood. Everyone knows that Tizo is like, he's dangerous and he's covered in blood, but it's the newcomer's blood, so it's like it's okay. People generally like either work with Tizo or they like him, even though he is this like hyper violent character. And so I like the way that those mesh together. I like the way that I embody the character. I make the same choices because I think that killing people's fun in Arco.
Yeah.
The same way that Tizo would jump to it too, because he fucking hates the Red Company. Um, but I do wonder about the other characters. I think it works for Tizo, specifically in Arco. Um, I wonder about the other characters. Like, the game gives them their motivations for it. Itse wants to be a greatly known warrior, and she learns through a vision that the Red Company are going to end her people. And then Afur or Chiho, they're getting revenge for the death of their sibling, whoever dies. I don't know. I felt it very strongly with Tizo.
No, Tiso's done. I agree. Tiso
Yeah.
definitely that makes complete sense to use the dreaded term. There's no little narrative dissonance
There we
between
go.
that.
Ring the bell.
Yeah, yeah. Fire me. Never have
Yeah.
me on ever again.
Yeah.
um,
No, I agree with you though. I think that a lot of games, again, effectiveness, or like they open up conversations that I don't think the game wants you to think about, or like that they weren't thinking about. Like with the Nathan Drake example. Like I like the Uncharted games a lot, but you can't tell me that Nathan Drake is a good person after all of this. And so there is that dissonance between what the game story is telling you and what the game as a whole is telling you about the character. I don't particularly think that Arco is a big offender here.
no,
I
it's
think that,
not.
and I think that revenge stories in general are an interesting way to use all that violence to embody a character, like in this, or in the Mad Max game is another like really good one, where it's just like the Mad Max world is fucking brutal. Everyone's killing everyone. So go bash some heads. Stuff like that. I was going to loop around to something else with that point about violence, but I forgot. I've been talking for so long. So yeah, no, I agree with you though about the greater point. I think games that marry those things together well are more rare than games that don't. We'll say.
Yeah, and it can be a thing that I agree. Alco's not one where this is like very like egregious. It does tie those themes, gameplay and narrative way better than a lot of other games, which is partly why I think it's like it's so compelling. And it
Hmm.
really tries to drive that point. I mean, with Tiso, I think it's extremely successful. Once you get to like Itse and then when you get to the siblings, that's when you're just like, okay, I don't, you know, this one it gets a little weirder. But it's just yeah, because when you play so many games, it just comes. It's just something that just keeps like weighing. It's like this, like the burden just keeps getting larger and larger after so many. You see 'em, you're just like, okay, so this is like how I'm interacting with the world. Like this is like my main
Hmm.
interaction. This is just but like this one does it well. Like it makes you think about it a bit more, especially within like Tiso's story arc.
Hmm. I think that a lot of times maybe it's a struggle to come up with more interesting ways to interact with the environment, especially if it's a game where there is huge conflict, like or like if you're going on a Dragon Quest style adventure or something like that, you're gonna fight monsters. Um, I just don't know like what other. I don't have the creativity to come up with like an alternate thing. Is this the Undertale that comparison that you were thinking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was because they both play on the guilt thing. If you do, I mean, obviously Undertale's like infamous for it's like you can you can just mess up once and you completely take yourself out from like that one ending, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Hmm.
but it Uncle I think tries to play on this, but more within not at the very end of the game, but as you're playing it, right? It's like this
Yeah.
like, are you just gonna just take like choose to fight like every single option that you get?
Yeah.
Right.
Which is why that prologue was so strong when, they basically, to the best of your knowledge, they kill a child at the beginning of the prologue, and you're like, "Man, fuck these guys." Like
Yeah.
they have to go. And so it primes you to then embody Tizo when you pick him up in the next chapter, and you're like, "Oh, cuz you I didn't know. I don't know if you saw it coming that Tizo was Teiko all grown up."
No, I didn't. I
Yeah.
did. Obviously, the second playthrough I did, but the
Yeah.
first one I didn't, and it was like, oh, this is like that kind of. It felt new in a specific way too, because it's like you don't really have games like starting like this, especially when you're so used to when you're used to like game narratives that are like very much like one to one to a lot of like Hollywood films where
Mhm.
there's like honestly like no stakes. To be honest, it's like, yeah, the bad guy's like the worst bad guy of all time, but it's like, nobody who matters to you in the story
Yeah.
actually is gonna like do something. And if they are gonna do, it's like they appear for like 2 seconds, and it's like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, that's the person they're gonna kill. They're gonna
Yeah.
kill Bob, the convenience store worker. The
Yeah, a
night,
little bit of
yeah,
yeah. Like a little bit of, like, that media literacy being like, "Oh, I didn't see that character die, they're not dead, they'll be back," stuff
yeah,
like that. A little bit with that. I predicted Tizo being Teiko in act, maybe, like, before they told me, we'll say. Maybe early in act 5, something like that. But like, them supposedly killing Teiko in the prologue primes you to jump into Tizo's, primes you to inhabit Tizo and be like, "Oh, Tizo's whole thing is he wants to kill all the red company. Cool, that's exactly what I wanna do now. So, here we go. We're gonna have fun with this." So, uh, yeah, it's interesting to think about this, specifically through the lens of, like, how many video games have you interacting with its world in, like, the most violent way possible, and kinda picking out the ones that do it really well, like, marry those 2 things together really well. I do think that, there's a lot of revenge stories in video games, but I do think the revenge stories is one way to, like, justify it a little bit more, we'll say. At least
yeah.
the game stories that we get, you know?
No, I mean the game like it hits it off with a bang. Like it reminds me of like Stephen Chow's like Journey to the West movie where it's like a little girl gets eaten by a demon fish. Like you just wouldn't see that in a Hollywood, and there's like a comedy action martial arts movie, and like, but she's
Uh-huh.
gone. Like you
Yeah.
wouldn't see that in a Hollywood film. That just wouldn't happen. So at that point,
Mhm.
you're like, wait, if that could happen to this like little, that's gonna happen. Like anybody, like
Yep.
could be off.
Yeah.
So
And so
Arco
Arco
sets
sells
it
you
up like that. Yeah, it's
yeah.
you're like, oh wow,
Yeah. Yeah, it sells you that this is serious, and, I don't know, I always felt like when I was playing I don't know if you thought about, like, that greater historical context or not, but it always feels like you're fighting the ocean in a way in a story like this, where, like, I never thought that I was gonna end colonization, like, we're gonna
okay,
have an alternate history here,
I see what you
and
mean. Yeah,
so that makes I mean, I didn't want to fight less because of it, and it's not like I was like, "Oh, it's not worth fighting," or something, not at all, but it was always in the back of my head of like, "Yeah, but, you know, one guy is not gonna stop all this," so it just kinda, like just kinda sad in a way that I thought was really effective too, and I don't know if that was the intent or just,
hmm.
the byproduct of a historical fiction, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I kind of separated like the grander, just like systemic issue
Mhm.
from just like I'm clearly like a super OP like character because it's like
Yeah.
you have bullet time, you have all this like and that kind of felt it's like, oh, I'm obviously gonna like get to the end, whatever the end is, right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I didn't really think the game itself was like about ending. It's just more like these like specific people living within this time of like great change, and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
gonna do they're gonna do what they're gonna do, regarding like their motivations and everything. Like let's see if you like push them through and like see how that ends. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it's I think the game is pretty story wise, at least it's pretty grounded in like and it's kind of where it gets its power, where it's like what happens in the real world in
Yeah.
this settings.
Yeah.
Like you're just not, you're not you have resistance, you have like these like specific stuff, and it's cool to see Arco like really like not necessarily directly, but at least like in allegory, like really like mirror a lot of some of like the weirder and even sometimes even more like brutal resistance stuff like within like Latin America. I always think about the story of Tupac Amaru, who's the
Mhm.
last like Inca. Uh, king. I don't know if you know any of these
I don't know the story, no.
freaking bonkers story. So obviously, you know, there we there were told this story how like the Spanish like came in and it was just like night and day. You know, it's done. They like conquered everything, whatever. Guns, germs,
Mhm.
and steel nonsense, right? It's like,
Mm.
and specifically in Peru, it took the Spanish 40 years to like
Mm.
actually like have some sort of like domain over the land. It's not even they controlled everything. They just had like, okay, we took what some of the major cities of like the Incas, and Tupac Amaru was the last Inca emperor. And
Mm.
you know, when they killed him, they cut off, you know, do like a show of like force, they cut off his head and like and all this stuff. Well, then 100 years, not 100 years, it was like in the 1800s, early 1800s, a somebody came up like who's like indigenous, like mixed race, came up and called himself Tupac Amaru II,
Mhm.
and he had like this huge like he gathered like this huge army that was like trying to essentially kick like the Spanish out, like a huge revolt, scared the shit out of like all like the Spaniards, because the one thing that they fear the most is kind of similar to like Haiti and like Cuba, which is like you have like the actual like indigenous or the slaves actually rise up because they
Mhm.
outnumber, right?
Yeah.
They outnumber the colonists like 1 to 10, depending on like what it is, sometimes even more. And he goes in, he takes in, and it's just like almost like there's like all these myths of like the reincarnation. And he obviously not successful. And that's who actually Tupac the rapper is named after.
Mm, okay.
Yeah, so it's like just like crazy stories like that that aren't really
Yeah.
told. And this game kind of plays on that and like gives like these perspectives, like oh, this like this like badass like woman wrestler like who's like influenced by like Mayan like culture and stuff. You know,
Mhm.
you don't see these perspectives at all when you really hear about Mayans in popular media. It's like maybe at best it's like uh apocalypto by, you know, a person that shouldn't be named here,
Uh-huh.
director who shouldn't be named. um but it's yeah, it's good. It has like interesting representation on it, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. I do like, kind of that mixing of a bunch of different people into, like, this setting too. Like, in the real world, they would have been a lot more spread out, but, in fantasy, it's okay to bring them closer together to show these, like, very more different perspectives, I guess, in here. And, yeah, it's just interesting for me to think about like the tragedy of revenge stories, because again I end up talking about quite a few revenge stories on the podcast here, and the question we always get to at the end is like, was it worth it? The question that a revenge story is asking to its audience at the end a lot of times is, was it worth it?
Yeah.
Because there's usually some cost along the way. And in Arcos, it's like extra interesting because, like, was it worth it? Tizo killed the guy he wanted to kill. He ended up dying too. Um, but in the grander scope, that's like this extra interesting layer that, like, I think you would only get with something like this, or like a small scale, like, thinking about some of those like smaller scale Star Wars stories that just kind of take place within the greater Star Wars universe, that like they're not changing the world. They're just doing what they can. Like I watched the first season of Andor, which is kind of like that.
That's a good. That's yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't watch any further than that. So I don't know how that story turned out. If they did change the world, that's awesome. Good for them, but not in season one. So yeah, I feel like I keep bringing it up, but it is a cool thing that, like, the game never makes you sit and think about this larger picture type of thing. But because we have the setting that we do, I it popped up to me after finishing the game, and it added an extra layer that, removed from that, I think I would like Arco quite a bit less.
Mm,
But it's the fact that we do have that historical aspect to it that makes me like it more, because I like I said, structurally within the story we could have gotten to the end of, like, put this story out in space with made up, you know races of aliens and invading, species or something like that, and I don't think I would have felt nearly as strongly about it as I do because we have this the way it is. Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree. And it's, I mean, a little spoilers for Andor. Essentially, all this leads to like Rogue One. That's like
Yeah,
the
okay.
stuff. Yeah. So it leads to, which is like in itself seems like not the biggest victory because you're just getting plans for like the, you
Yeah.
know, this thing. But that essentially is what leads, like, once you get into the movies, to actually like destroying like the Death Star and everything, which links to what we're talking about, Arco, which is like, are you actually going to make like this little action going to make that impact? It might not, like in isolation, it won't, but you
Right.
know, maybe. And this gets back to a lot of narratives of you know, of like colonial, like anti-colonial resistance and struggle. It's like those on themselves don't do anything, but usually they build on like each other. So maybe
Yeah.
somebody Tizo's like memory will be like remembered, and like, you know, he multiplies in the sense because like after death he becomes like a legend.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of stories like just about resistance in general, or like, you know, the stuff that we've seen around as resistance in our own small ways has become a bigger part of our own lives.
Yeah.
And just that idea of like, no, you one person, you're not gonna, you know, you're not gonna change all this by yourself, but like little actions do add up. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that if they were to continue out the story and, you know, give you ending slides that say what happened in the region, I'm assuming that this was a bump in the road for the newcomers, as it probably would have been in real history. But um, that doesn't mean that those things were not worth, you know, pursuing. Resistance is not worth pursuing for sure. So uh, really interesting game, and one that the spoiler section brings out some interesting conversation, some different media analogs and stuff like that in a way that I think is super neat. So really interesting conversation here about Arco. So thanks for giving me a little over 2 hours to dive into it. It's been a good time as always. It's been great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And at the end, I'll give the call for everybody to check out Luis's work on, well, lots of different places. Best thing to do is probably just follow Luis on Blue Sky, and then you'll see when new stuff pops up. But you can find stuff on NPR, Debug Magazine, Gamers with Glasses, Unwinnable, lots of other places. So as the music plays us out, go find some things to read. I think you'll have a good time. And for everyone who's still here at the end, as always, you're my hero. And tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.
You ever notice how some games don't need 100 hours to leave a mark?
Absolutely. I'm Michael.
And I'm Marcus. We're the host of Tiny Game Chronicles, a podcast that celebrates games that are small in scope, but huge in heart.
Every other week, we dive into games that you can finish in a few hours, but think about for days after.
We've been exploring these hidden gems, and every time it feels like uncovering something extraordinary.
So whether you're short on time or just love discovering new worlds, join us.
Listen to Tiny Game Chronicles on your favorite podcast app, or catch us on YouTube.
Tiny Game Chronicles, where every other week we discuss games that are quick plays,
but epic journeys.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too, until now. Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
and Jacob McCoy.
with many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style. Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed. and follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers and happy gaming.